Wave 48 specifies the two major compounds and the type of elements that make them up. The first major category of compounds are ionic, and they always consist of a metal-nonmetal combination. And note that in this type of bond, electrons are transferred from the metal to the nonmetal. In this case, the metal would form a positive ion and nonmetal would form a negative ion, and their oppositely charged ions would attract toward one another because oppositely charged particles will attract. In covalent compounds, it will always feature a non-metal combination. And note that in covalent compounds, electrons are shared. So the two major categories are ionic and covalent. How do we tell them apart? We have a metal, non-metal for ionic, non-metal, non-metal for covalent. Ionic compounds, electrons transfer. Covalent compounds, electrons are shared. So let's try some problems that deal with this. Ice, H2O solid, is classified as if you said choice 2, you got it correct. Why? Note that covalent compounds are also referred to as molecular compounds, so they're the same thing. And note that H and O are both nonmetals, so you should immediately think, based off their classification, that this is a molecular compound or a covalent compound, where electrons are being shared between the oxygen and the hydrogen. Let's try another problem. Which formulas represent one ionic compound and one molecular compound? If you said 3, you got it correct. Note that Ba is a metal and chlorine is a nonmetal, so this is the ionic compound. Nitrogen and oxygen are both nonmetals. They're to the right of the staircase, and therefore are a molecular compound or a covalent compound. Which formula represents a molecular compound? Hopefully you're noticing a pattern. If you see the two nonmetals together, you know that you're looking for the covalent compound. So if you said answer choice 1, you got it correct. Please note that hydrogen is the only nonmetal to the left of the staircase on the periodic table. Which formula represents a molecular compound? If you said 3, you got it correct. You have two nonmetals, nitrogen and oxygen. All the others feature a mixture of simply elements or ionic compounds or ionic and covalent compounds. This one is just asking you for a molecular or covalent compound purely. So answer choice 3 is correct. The table below contains selected information about chlorine and two compounds containing chlorine. One piece of information is missing for each of the substances in the table. So here it gives you chlorine, calcium chloride, and 1,2-dichloroethane formula is missing. Explain in terms of electrons why the compound containing calcium and chlorine is classified as an ionic compound. Please note that any questions that say in terms of must state that term in your explanation for full credit. So you must say something about the electrons within calcium and chlorine in order for it to be classified as an ionic compound. If you said that the valence electrons of calcium, the metal, is transferred to chlorine, which is a nonmetal, to form an ionic bond, you got it correct. Note that in an ionic compound, you have a metal-nonmetal combination. Electrons are being transferred, and frequently, the metal will lose its electrons and transfer them to the nonmetal in order to stabilize both atoms and fill its outer shell. Explain in terms of element classification why K2O is an ionic compound. Here, you must classify the elements in your explanation in order to properly state and get full credit for this question. If you said that K2O is an ionic compound because it consists of a metal, potassium, bonded to a nonmetal, oxygen, you would have gotten full credit. Metal is potassium, and that's how we classify it. The nonmetal in this case is oxygen, which is how we would classify O in this case. And because of that metal-nonmetal combination, it's an ionic compound. Next question. Atoms of nonmetals generally react with atoms of metals by If you said gaining electrons to form ionic compounds, you would have gotten full credit. Please note that nonmetals will generally gain electrons from the metal, which loses electrons, in order to form ionic compounds. You should have been able to eliminate 2 and 4 because metals and nonmetals only form ionic compounds, and in ionic compounds, electrons are gained or transferred as opposed to being shared, which occurs in covalent compounds. So please note that when it comes to 48, way 48, ionic compounds are those that feature a metal-nonmetal combination. Covalent or molecular compounds are nonmetals and nonmetals. In ionics, electrons are transferred from the metal to the nonmetal, whereas covalent, you have two nonmetals sharing electrons between the two. Hopefully this was helpful, and thank you for watching.